Class A movement leader Mmusi Maimane says the exam pass mark of 30% sets young people up for failure. Maimane has garnered just over 1,500 signatures for a petition to the Basic Education Department to change the mark.
What I'm battling to understand is that at which level do you expect that it's satisfactory that you've met the requirements at 30%? And then ultimately, for that same student, if they seek to achieve a university entrance, when they go to university, it is now common cause for many universities are now running bridging courses that force them to ensure that ultimately they have to correct the learning abilities of those students. So I hold the absolute view that ultimately we have to scrap the 30%. We have to be able to ask better of our students and our learners if we're going to achieve a reform in education. And at this point in time, I'm not convinced that the Department of Education is in fact waging this war and achieving the outcomes we as a country would like to see from our learners. Comparable to other nations of the world, we are lagging behind.
Well, the Basic Education Department has responded to Maimane. Here is spokesperson for the department, Elijah Mhlanga.
What is misunderstood here is, one, that there's a lowering of standard. There is no such. Two, that there is a common, or there's a common number, yes, which is a pass mark for all the subjects across the system, which is not the case. We have said that there is a bachelor pass admission, and there's a diploma as well as a higher certificate. And for those three categories, there are different pass requirements. So the message is that if you get 30% for all subjects, you fail. So we cannot say that 30% is a pass mark. It can, in every education system, there has to be a minimum pass for subjects, which is conditional.
Right, let's talk more about that then with Professor Nicky Roberts, an Education Research Fellow at the University of Johannesburg. Professor, a very good evening to you. Welcome to Newsfeed. So, is there a fundamental misunderstanding of the issue of the 30% and how pupils are actually progressed?
Yes, there is. I think Mr. Maimane is woefully uninformed, and I think looking for political point scoring, which for me as a citizen has just meant that I hold no confidence in the South African movement running our education system, because he has simply demonstrated that he has absolutely no understanding of how assessment in our schooling system and internationally works. Firstly, there is no pass mark for a matric. As Mr. Mhlanga explained, there are three levels of matriculation: a degree, a diploma, and a certificate. Each of those have different thresholds over which there are combinations of marks that are needed to be able to complete matric. The fundamental issue is the quality of those passes, and any student who thinks that squeaking over with a pass mark of 50 or 51 for a degree or 31 for a diploma is going to get them into the head of the queue into university or impress their future employer is woefully uninformed. So I feel Mr. Maimane has really put himself out into the public domain, revealing his ignorance around education and assessment, how it works, fueled a really silly debate when what our matriculants should be focusing on is doing the best that they can.
And just on that point, Prof, the issue of the 30%, yes, it's now being raised by the One South Africa movement, but it's one that has come up quite a bit, hasn't it, over the years? I mean, I remember a few years ago when I was in school, I won't say when, if you, for example, had 7 subjects, you were required to pass 4 of the 7 to move on to the next grade.
That's still the case, Thembekile. So that's part of what I'm saying is a really disingenuous provocation from Mr. Maimane. I know it has been an ongoing debate. It's something that I've responded to before. But Thembekile, you'll know that if you got 51, you wouldn't be sitting in the newsroom. So you were going for the best possible mark that you can. I've actually argued that, you know, if students think that they're going to get by with 4 subjects at 50% and they're going for 51, well, then they're not equipping themselves either for the world of work or for future learning. And, you know, a matric doesn't automatically get you access into anything, either a degree, a diploma, or a certificate. You simply go to the back of the queue, and that queue is ordered in relation to your marks. So any matriculant or any person starting grade 12, if you think you're going to just squeak over the pass mark, you're doing yourself a great disservice. You really need to be applying yourself as best as you can and trying to get the best possible results to get closest in front of the queue into higher education or into the world of work. And then the second issue, Tembakile, which I'd ask you and others who are interested in this debate, is that 30% doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's 30% of something. Now, are you certain that the something you learned is the same something that our students today are learning? And in mathematics, for example, you'll see the mathematics curriculum is actually more extensive. Our students now in pure mathematics are expected to do finance. That wasn't part of the curriculum when I wrote matric, and that was under apartheid. And that was, you know, white students, supposedly the best of the best. All our students now do more mathematics than I did when I was in grade 12. So I think it's really directing attention away from the real issues. Calling it a war against this is just outrageous. Our real problems are poverty, inequality, and a whole range of difficulties that we have in education, which really don't rest on where we set the threshold for pass or fail.
And I want to just explore the idea of a 50% pass that some have been saying is what would be needed per subject, perhaps, for someone to have done well enough, right? And I wonder if raising the level to a 50% per subject would even necessarily automatically mean the quality of learning and teaching is better.
I think that's an excellent question. Let's do a thought experiment. So tomorrow, Minister Angie Motshekga says, okay, everybody has to get 50% in all 7 subjects in order to get matric. What's going to happen the next day? Absolutely nothing, except lots of students having to repeat grade 12, filling up our classes, making them even more overcrowded, students not being able to exit when they're 18, 19, 20, 21, sitting in schools, taking up the places of the youngsters who are moving through. So thinking that, you know, the issue is really the threshold of the pass and how many subjects you need to get that really misses the point of education and really misses the point of what are the ways in which we can improve that education. I think there are strategic interventions that are happening. The introduction of teaching assistants is a key issue, getting rid of ghost teachers, making sure that we have quality learning environments. Those are real issues in schooling. But to be focusing on how many subjects and what the threshold is really missing the point.
And I suppose one of the areas that would need to be improved in the context of the high school pupils and matriculants is that we need to get them ready for varsity, because often even the best pupils in high school battle to adapt to a university environment.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm saying 30% in its own or 50% on its own is meaningless. So it's of what? So 30% of being able to work flexibly, respond to a pandemic, being able to move online, to know when you're struggling and to ask questions, to choose the right subjects that you want to pursue for your career. Those are things that we want our students to be able to do. Not to be able to just target, well, let me just, if that's the threshold, I'm going to go just above. Because then they don't understand how the marketplace works or how higher learning works. And so I think the introduction of new subjects, which we've seen, also very different from when you and I were at school. You know, there's now maritime science, there is coding that's being introduced, there are a range of new technical mathematics subjects, hospitality studies, tourism, you know, far more applied options within matric, which have happened over the last 5 years. And I think we need to be asking, you know, of what? What is it that we're teaching? What is it that we're aiming for? And how is that internationally comparable? And there has been quite significant changes with regard to what is taught. as well as with regard to, the skills that our students have coming out of school. So that transition into school, into the world of work or university is an ongoing battle for why we have schooling.
And Professor Roberts, I often wonder when we have the debate around the matric pass rate and whatever grades pass rate, if people factor in the fact that actually, if we're being honest, there are people who just are not going to get 50, 60, 80% because they're just not that way inclined naturally, or that's not aligned with their interests. What about them in the conversation?
Absolutely, and that's why I argue, actually, let's just scrap the pass mark altogether. I'm not saying that, you want 18-year-olds who can't read moving through our society, but you are wanting to support people with, a kind of a certificate to learn, and that really happens in grade 9. This is your license to go on and specialize in some way in the further education and training environment. But then there are different routes and different combinations. We have 2 languages as compulsory and mathematics or maths literacy as compulsory. I think that's great. We now have everybody doing maths, some kind of maths, either maths lit, technical maths or mathematics, which is essential for citizenship. But then they can choose to be taking a range of far more applied subjects and to be studying those at different levels. And that's what Mr. Mhlanga was trying to explain, is that we no longer have this concept of a matric. We have a bachelor's pass where you have entry into university if you're in the right place in the queue. You can get a diploma pass, which means you can go in and do a diploma. You might mature a bit. You're able to do better in that. You can switch to a degree, or you can exit with a diploma, which allows you into the world of work. And you have those who just come out with a certificate. And again, they are then able to continue their learning at certificate level, either in a more practical and applied technical subject, because, not everybody is cut out to be pursuing a degree which is heavy on reading, heavy on language, heavy in the head, if you like. We need plumbers, we need carpenters. So all of those trades, those people do need to be able to read and do some basic mathematics and thinking, but they don't need the high-level analytical skills that universities are designed to provide.
Professor Nicky Roberts, an Education Research Fellow at the University of Johannesburg. Good to have your time tonight.
Thanks so much.